Today's guest is Suzette, an active, semi-retired mother and grandmother looking to plan for future potential healthcare needs. Welcome, Suzette.
Thank you.
Now, nobody really likes planning for future healthcare needs, do they? Because you got to think about, ooh, what's going to go wrong. But before we get there, tell me your story.
Well, I'm semi-retired. We have our own business, my husband and I. We've been partners for 30 years, and then I semi-retired about 8 years ago. I was ready for something different. I wanted to pursue some of my interests, and so I just thought, this is my time. So I left my job in good hands and decided to just pursue the fun things in life.
So what are some of those fun things you like to do?
Lots of things. I at that time I was doing a lot more painting, so I love creative things. So the painting and the singing, I've sung for years, and I'm still in a choir now, and I pursue that only because that gives me a huge amount of joy. And I have 2 grown children who have grown up to be fine, upstanding citizens. So what can I say? I'm happy about that too.
So you're not having to be the family bank anymore?
No, not the family bank, and definitely not, being called upon all the time, put it that way, as a grown, grown kids asking, although I do have 6 grandchildren.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, four of our own and 2 blended, so that keeps me busy too. I mean, I love to spend time with them, so all of those things combined keep me very busy, and a fairly large group of friends that I like to nurture and keep busy with.
Do you miss working full-time?
No, there's the odd time I think I'd like to do something part-time, but then my husband says, who'd want to hire you at 10 o'clock in the morning with a cappuccino in your hand and wanting to leave by 2, which is about right. So I don't think that's really, there are times that I would like to have something a little more structured, but then what I do with that is I find volunteer work that fills that need, and I enjoy that as well.
Now, your husband's still working?
Yes.
Running the business?
He is.
You're helping out?
Yes.
What does retirement look like for the 2 of you together down the road?
Well, once he retires, I think the biggest opportunity, I'm not going to say challenge, opportunity will be that we sort out how we're going to live in one house together for some period of time.
Oh, because you're used to being apart.
That's right, and we're both used to our independence, and so I think that will be, an interesting opportunity to work through. I think we're going to build him a man cave, actually, and then that way he'll have some time. And he has other interests as well, so I think that will be partly, a fairly large thing to deal with at first. And we still plan on doing a fair amount of traveling. We have done some already, but I think what we're looking for now is probably longer trips, things that we can take, and he won't have to worry about going back to work. So I think that will definitely be another large part. We have a few places on our bucket list we haven't gone to yet. Yeah.
Well, you brought up a really good point for couples going into retirement, especially when they're both working, or one's working and one's been at home. Actually, some cases that's even harder. Then you're both at home together all the time, day in, day out. So I think it's important for a successful retirement to have your own interests, which it sounds like you both do, but also have some common things that you like to do together, which the travel is a big part of that, and obviously the grandkids. Do you feel like you're ready financially for retirement? Do you have your retirement plans in order?
I'd say that we have a large part of that ready. I think that we have, our finances in fairly good order. The only thing that, the one thing we haven't done that I hope that we'll do is end-of-life planning. I'd like to get that done so that our kids don't have to worry about that someday.
That's nice.
And then I think there's probably that whole aspect of what happens if you need long-term care. And I see that in my volunteer work, because I volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association, an art and music program, and I can see the devastation that it brings to families. And so, it's not something that we want to think about, but it's something that's very real and very possible.
It is.
So, yeah.
So what's your big question for me today?
Well, I would like to have some idea of what a person needs to plan for financially, so that if that comes about, what amount you need to have on a yearly basis, I think, to cover the costs, so that it doesn't impact your finances.
Well, that's a great question. So don't go away. Find out what Suzette needs to do to ensure her health doesn't erode her wealth after the break.
The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
Welcome back. We're here with Suzette to see what she needs to do today to ensure her future healthcare costs are covered. Suzette, thanks for asking such a great question. Did you realize that 75% of Canadians have not factored in long-term healthcare costs as part of their financial plan?
Well, that's pretty scary.
Well, you're not one of them. You're one of the ones who's now planning. What are some of the things that concern you the most?
Well, I think, when I look at the future, and you don't have a crystal ball, so it's hard to know, but if you get a really debilitating disease, all the things that happen then, like the personal care you need and the Meals on Wheels and all of those projects, because the government is trying to keep you in your home as long as possible. It's just the cost involved in all of that. And then of course, I always look at it from the point of view that then you won't be traveling, so you'll have some money for that as well. But, it's hard to know how much you're going to need, because a debilitating disease can last a long time.
It can, and you don't know if just yourself or both you and your partner are needing care. If it's just one, does that mean the other one doesn't go traveling? Because you mentioned using that travel fund as your long-term care fund, which isn't a bad strategy. But how about prescriptions? Do you think you need to set some money aside for that? Or do you think the government pays for it?
No, the government's not going to pay for some of them. I mean, we've just heard recently of someone we know that has to spend $100,000 a year for medication.
Holy smokes.
Like the government's not going to pay for something like that. So those are the things that you might eventually have to pay for.
Well, as a matter of fact, a recent survey showed that 44% of Canadians expect to pay zero for medications throughout their senior and retirement years, when in fact the average cost of medication for a Canadian is about $5,600 a year after the age of 65. There's also about a 50% chance that a Canadian will develop some form of a disability by age 75. So these costs are real. Now, when it comes to long-term care, the average cost is in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $30,000 a year for long-term care coverage. And those people that think the government is going to take care of them, they're going to be very unhappy with what that looks like. For example, the government-funded care homes, there's usually huge wait lists to get in.
That's right.
And if it's an emergency situation, you end up waiting in the hospital. And hopefully you make it to the next stage, but you may not. And I don't want to depress people, but I think it's important to look at. Do you have any emergency funding or insurance set aside to help pay for some of these things?
We have critical illness.
Great.
In our plan, and life insurance.
Good.
But
life insurance only pays out when you're dead.
Yes.
However, it allows you to spend your capital during your lifetime knowing that you have life insurance to leave an estate behind if that's important to you. So I think some of the things that you need to consider is you need to have a look at all the things that could potentially happen, figure out what each of those things might cost if just one of you is sick, if both of you are sick. Take those numbers into your financial advisor and incorporate them as part of your overall financial plan. If you have enough wealth to cover it, great. If you don't, then have a look at maybe buying some additional long-term care coverage or critical illness coverage. And once you know you've got a plan to cover the unforeseen events that happen, you can sleep at night.
True enough.
Suzette, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And stay tuned, because up next, the power of giving and how to make philanthropy part of your investment strategy.